Bingung. Okay, let's go. Được. Hoa cỏ. Hoa chồng phần nè. Chắc có. Không ai. Hoa siêu không. Trinh.
Tapi tadi udah nonton video sih. Thank you.
Right? That's where the Second Continental Congress, and then about a decade later, the Constitutional Convention met. That's the room we all came to see. But we're going to start in this room on purpose for a very good reason. Because when we're talking about any historical event, doesn't matter what it is, we have to talk about the legislative branch of Pennsylvania's colonial government met. So this is where legislators who had been elected by, well, those men who could vote in the province of Pennsylvania. This is where those representatives sat and made laws on behalf of the people of Pennsylvania. And this is, in this room, this is where, like I said, in the spring of 1775, the Second Continental Congress comes to meet. They actually kicked the Pennsylvania Assembly out of their own legislature, told them to go meet upstairs, and they took over this space. Now, we have the tables arranged for our purposes in a kind of geographic fashion. We say that the northern colonies, New England colonies, all that over here, then the sort of mid-Atlantic colonies here, and then the southern colonies over there. The thing is, we have actually no evidence to support that the tables were laid out this way at all during the actual event. We don't know that for sure. But let's imagine for a moment that they are. And over here on the table of Massachusetts, you have delegates from the Massachusetts delegation, people like Samuel Adams and John Adams. They are begging and they are pleading with the other delegates in this room, asking them for help. And I really do mean begging and pleading. Because the army that is laying siege to Boston that I mentioned across the way there, that's not the Continental Army yet. At this point, early spring of 1775, that's the Army of New England. And it is only the New England colonies that are actually in open armed rebellion against the rest of the British Empire. Colonies like Georgia or South Carolina, they might empathize, they may feel sympathy, but they have their own worries to be concerned about. So we have to keep in mind that these 13 colonies are not united in any way other than the fact that they are all British. Other than that, though, it's like 13 siblings. When George Washington, prior to the American Revolution, writes in a letter or a journal, "My country," he doesn't mean all 13 colonies. He means Virginia. When John Adams uses the words, "my country," he doesn't mean all 13 colonies. He means Massachusetts. The idea of your identity being tied to your colony specifically is very strong. Trying to get all 13 of these colonies to move in one direction with one purpose towards one goal is virtually impossible on many occasions. However, eventually, as we know, we corral the rest of the colonies into creating a continental army. George Washington takes control of it, and that's that, right? War's over. We won. Woo. No, of course not. The war doesn't end until 1783. It's the longest war the United States is involved in up until Vietnam. But there's another event we've got to talk about before we get to the end of the war. Something famous that happened in 1776. Anybody have any idea what important document I might be talking about that came out in 1776, July of 1776 to be specific? Anybody know the name of what I'm talking about? I heard it. Declaration of Independence. So, once again, though, in the passage of the Declaration of Independence, we see that fractiousness coming through. Because while by July of 1776, we have been fighting this war for more than a year, there are still many, many people who are opposed to the idea of independence. Many of these people are led or represented by somebody named John Dickinson. Anybody ever heard of John Dickinson? A couple nods. You may have come across his pen name, a farmer from Pennsylvania. He wrote a series of very important letters and articles in the late 1760s and early 1770s, talking about how Parliament was violating the British Constitution and that they had to be resisted with violence if necessary. Let's be clear about this. John Dickinson is no loyalist. He is a committed revolutionary, a committed patriot, and yet he is dead set against the idea of independence. He is doing everything in his power to slow down the faction led by people like John and Samuel Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who are pushing for a Declaration of Independence and a complete separation from the British Empire. That is a step way too far for people like Dickinson and others. It's not going to be smooth. Benjamin Franklin, when he was participating in the Constitutional Convention, looked at that chair up there, what we now famously call the rising sun chair. He wasn't sure if that sun was rising or setting. He's looking at George Washington sitting in that chair, and yes, that is the real chair right there that George Washington sat in during the Constitutional Convention. Franklin's trying to figure out, is that sun setting or rising? Should we be looking to the future with optimism? Awesome. And yeah, like I said, I'll be right outside. If you have any questions, you can take about another minute or so to take some photographs in here, but then you will need to leave this space because we will have another.
Enggak lah, udah.